Heaton-Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship again, and you've obviously heard my speech many times before, which is why I believe you're just about to scoot off to do better things. So, but I'd like to thank you for your, the generous way you've chaired this. And I'd like to start by thanking the honourable member, my friend for Sutton and Cheam, for the very thoughtful way he introduced this whole debate. He, like I, campaigned to leave. He, like I, knows that there is actually many different ways of leaving. The British people did give an instruction to their government, and he, like I, know that the government is intent on delivering on it. I guess I should answer a couple of the points that have been raised in the debate. It's always a pleasure to hear the Honourable Lady from Bath telling us that we cannot cancel Brexit. So, in general, the Lib Dem policy is that we can't cancel it. So what we'll do, we'll try any other means to undermine that result whatsoever, be it parliamentary or otherwise. And I struggle realistically with the Lib Dems when they say pretty much anything, because I remember in 2010 them campaigning vehemently to get rid of tuition fees, and then as soon as they got into government going exactly the reverse. So she's not campaigning to cancel Brexit now, but I absolutely know she is. So I think she should just be a bit more honest in the debate. I happily give way.
The Liberal Democrats, including me, have never made any beans from the fact that we think the best deal we have is staying in the European Union. But we acknowledge that we had a referendum. So what I'm saying is, absolutely, we have had a referendum. We now have a deal. We need to clarify with the British people whether they think that this is actually what they voted for. That is a very democratic way of going forward. But if there was such a referendum, of course, I would campaign to stay in the European Union.
It's remarkably clear for a Liberal Democrat. And she did mention in her speech that the biggest number of people that are writing to her now are people arguing for a no deal. It's not a surprise when they've seen the political class argue like we have done. What people from the outside see is people trying to stop Brexit from happening. And that's why people get frustrated. I happily give way to my honourable friend.
Clarification with the answer that he's had from the honourable lady there. Can he remember any group campaigning saying, and when we've got the answer, we'll make sure we come back again and double check? Because, I don't think anyone thought we could unpick all this without doing some forms of negotiation. Did anyone make that case to double check and then go back again?
To the best of my knowledge, I didn't hear anybody mentioning that in the course of the campaign, in the course of the debates that we had in Parliament that led to the referendum being granted in the first place. So no, I think I can honestly say I never heard that up until possibly the day after the result of the referendum. Actually, I was going to come on to my right honourable friend's contribution, my right honourable friend from St Albans. As there are now two chairmen in the room, I think I should make the point that they both need to go back to Mr. Speaker to ensure that she gets higher priority on the Speaker's list, because more people need to know and need to hear what the Honourable Lady has to say on this subject. She made a huge amount of sense. I think she underestimates her value to this place and to this debate. She said that I campaigned to leave and I was but one vote. She was joined by 17,410,741 others, of which I was one, and that's a decent-sized number. I completely get her point, which is why I do get slightly anxious in some of these debates, that we are not seen to be cloth-eared in here. We have a referendum result that we are delivering on, and so I agreed with pretty much every word she said, including about my contribution to whatever debate there was around the deal, because I absolutely voted for the deal first time round. With my personal experience of the European Union, I actually do trust them to deliver on the matters that they sign up to. So I was happy to go into the lobby I did. But I can guarantee to her that the government is not going to ignore the fact that 17.4 million people voted in the way they did. It's always a pleasure to listen to the Honourable Gentleman from Glasgow North, now too silent as the Scottish National Party's chief whip. And when I was a whip in government, it was a pleasure to deal with him that because he is always courteous, polite, completely on the money, will never go back on a word that he says. So, and this is true in this particular case too. He's a passionate European. He wears his heart on his sleeve on these matters, and he articulated that very well today. And so I guess I should ask him to forgive me for being exactly the same, but in the reverse position. Because I tend to believe that I would love to quote parts of his speech back to him. Maybe I can do it over a beer sometime. The bits about staying within a union, you have a chance to shape its future and all that sort of stuff. But we'll leave that for another day. But I did listen to his contribution, and I completely understand. Of course, I'll give way to the Honourable Lady.
Does he question my honesty about being a passionate pro-European?
I absolutely do not. I just wish her party was as honest as she was. And when it comes, the Honourable Gentleman for Sheffield Central, it's very interesting, and I always enjoy our debates. And really, I enjoy debating anybody from the Labour Party front bench because it's interesting to see which bit of the Labour Party turns up. Is it the bit that wants a second referendum, or is it the bit that maybe the Honourable Gentleman agreed with his party leader that actually Article 50 should have been activated the day after the referendum? Is he part of the democratic socialist movement that actually believes you should respect the result of the referendum, or is it more the actually politician, the kind of authoritarian Labour Party that believes actually the metropolitan intelligentsia part of the Labour Party that believes that the people got this completely wrong? Now, I know him because he is a very wise, long-standing pro-European as well, principled in these matters, and I don't doubt his sincerity in his argument, but I do struggle with his party's position, because it seems to be ever-changing. They must have heard that I've started speaking outside. I'd like to get that sort of response. It's fascinating to see people talk about taking no deal off the table, as he did. Not the wisest thing to do in any negotiation. And he says it's... Of course, absolutely.
If he thinks it's not the wisest thing to do, why did the Chancellor of the Exchequer reassure businesses that that's exactly what would happen?
Because we're working towards a deal, and there is a deal on the table. Parliament's actually given some indication when it took back control last Tuesday that we are going... There is a deal that is possible out there, and we want to deliver a deal. But a responsible government plans for all eventualities, and we're planning for a no-deal eventuality, exactly like the European Commission is, exactly like 27 other member states are, in all the announcements they make about what might happen in a no-deal circumstance, which should give him some comfort, limited comfort, that the fears that he has about a no-deal situation are not as bad as he might believe them to be. But if we were to take no deal off the table, as it would be disastrous, his reasoning is that it would be disastrous for an economy. I take it then, if you extend that logic to its obvious conclusion, that we're trying to persuade fellow Labour MPs not to contest the 1922 general election, because we all know that a Labour government leads to worsening economic conditions and makes people poorer in general. So therefore, the obvious conclusion is anything that makes people potentially poorer you should not do, and therefore you wouldn't stand as a candidate in that general election. So, I thought I might rise to that, but anyway, you want to go for a cup of tea. I understand. So I'd like to thank all those that are participating in today's debate, and especially Clive Grenville, who set up this petition. I think he should be pleased with the numbers of people he got to sign it. Fundamentally, it's a petition that's asking the government to respect the outcome of the 2016 referendum and thereby deliver on our withdrawal from the European Union as millions voted to do. And let me assure the Honourable Member for Sutton and Cheam, my friend, that those that signed this petition, that the government remains committed to delivering on the instruction to leave, given to us by the British people. We remain clear that our policy is not to revoke Article 50, nor to extend, delay, or hold a second referendum on exit. Happily.
On that specific point, just for the sake of absolute clarity, Is he saying then that there are no circumstances whatsoever in which the government will seek an extension of Article 50?
If I may repeat very carefully what I just said, we remain clear, the government remains clear, that our policy is not to revoke Article 50, nor to extend it, delay it, or hold a second referendum on exit. And perhaps it would help this debate if I re-outline the now very familiar reasons why the government has taken this position. And I will remind honourable members of the immense progress we have made towards delivering that exit that we as a government and as Parliament were entrusted to deliver. Firstly, let me deal with the overarching question of revoking Article 50. As I've made clear, the government's policy remains that we should not and will not revoke our notice to withdraw from the European Union under Article 50. To revoke Article 50 would not only be to betray the vote of the British people in 2016, it would betray the mandates on which the vast majority of us in this place were elected at the last general election. Let me emphasise again to honourable members the strength of that mandate and the clarity of the instruction given to us by the 2016 referendum that illustrates why we must respect the result and why government policy is not to revoke Article 50. In the summer of 2016, millions of people came out to have their say, trusting that their vote would count, that after years of being ignored by politicians, their voices would be heard. This vote enjoyed a higher turnout than any previous referendum, and 17.4 million of those people voted to leave the European Union. It's the highest number of votes cast for anything in the UK electoral history, and the biggest democratic mandate for a course of action ever directed at any UK government. And as I've reminded the honourable gentleman for Sheffield Central before, and he will remember this, the passion, and the House a few times, the passion that people were voting with was quite extraordinary. Those of us who were touring polling stations on the day will remember Pencilgate, where people refused to put their X in the box using a pencil for fear the government would rub it out. The battles over trying to get a pen into a polling station to vote were quite extraordinary. Happily...
Does he agree with me that I actually, because I was campaigning for Leave and went around various areas, I actually was talking to people who said, do you know what, one of the reasons I am voting is because this vote adds up nationwide. Sometimes there's no point voting because you can't change the Member of Parliament one way or another, and I don't bother voting. But this time my vote has the full weight of counting nationwide.
I heard that many a time. No, it's not a call for proportional representation. It's just be careful what you wish for. I was elected under proportional representation for the first time in 1999, and whilst it's a lovely system to get me elected and for the European Parliament, it is not a good system if you want a democratic choice to be delivered. This result was one which Parliament then overwhelmingly confirmed by voting with clear and convincing majorities in both its houses for the European Notification of Withdrawal Act. European Union Notification of Withdrawal Act. That is, Parliament, informed by the will of its electorate, voted to trigger Article 50 and leave the European Union. Further still, in the 2017 general election, over 80% of those who voted for parties who committed to respect the result of the referendum. Not only the government, but also the opposition stood on and were elected by manifestos which committed to respecting the decision of the people. We've made promises and commitments to the people we represent. From when we held the referendum to when we as a Parliament voted to begin the process of implementing its result. The British people must be able to trust their government both to effect their will and to deliver the best outcome for them. And as the Prime Minister has said, this is about more than the decision to leave the European Union. It's about whether the public can trust their politicians to put in place the decision they took. To do otherwise would be to undermine the decision of the British people, to disrespect the powerful democratic values of this country and this government. Therefore, we cannot and must not frustrate the will of the people by revoking Article 50. I understand that, despite this, there are those who advocate for a revocation, extension or otherwise delay of our Article 50 notice. In order to deliver the exit that people voted for, if Parliament is clear that it does not wish to deliver a no deal, as it expressed last week in the House, then the obvious conclusion to that is we must secure a deal. The only alternative, as the Prime Minister has laid out, is revoking Article 50, and this is not government policy, and it would be, as the Prime Minister said, to disrespect the biggest vote in our democratic history. The Prime Minister has also been clear that other delays, such as extending Article 50, do not resolve the issue of the deal with which we leave the European Union. And moreover, reminded at the House this week that the 29th of March 2019 exit date is one which Parliament itself voted for when it voted to trigger Article 50. The government is clear on its notice to withdraw under Article 50 as instructed by the British people. So, I reiterate again to honourable members that this government is committed to delivering the result of the referendum. It remains our policy not to revoke Article 50 and not to frustrate the outcome of the 2016 referendum, which I trust will please the petitioners on this occasion. Instead, we continue to work to overcome the challenges and seize the opportunities to deliver on the result of the vote by the British people in the summer of 2016 to leave the European Union.